Today I'd like to talk about something that popped into my head recently. I actually thought of this a long time ago, but it just sort of came back, and that is mythological deities as powers that we feel and experience. So recently we went through Mercury in retrograde, which is like an astrological phenomenon that some people believe, some people don't. I've had experiences with it over the years, so I kind of believe in it. And basically what it means is that when Mercury goes into retrograde, things like your computer or communication with people tends to break down. Mercury, which is also called Hermes, is the messenger, or like the nimble trickster god. So if Mercury is in retrograde, all of those aspects sort of go in reverse and things get broken down or communication stops working. So we just came out of that, and it got me to thinking about how in my life I've kind of, the older I've gotten, I've started to see powers or forces in my life as more alive, I guess. You know, people tend to think of the universe as this sort of cold, dead place, modern people, but I don't think it's that. You know, Nietzsche said God is dead. Well, I guess if you look at it from a certain point of view, but if you also look at it from a more ancient perspective, and you know, we tend to get a lot of wisdom from the ancients, so I don't see why we can't get into their mindset a little more. And so in their myths, they tend to define the gods and the goddesses as these sort of powers that can have profound effects on you. Sometimes you can harness them, sometimes you are at their will, at their mercy, I guess. And, you know, I think people tend to think of myths as just stories, but there's a deep allegorical content to them, and if you can tap into that, I think it can really open you up to what reality could be. It can expand your awareness, I think. And so I'll just give you a very quick example of that. If you think of the myth of Jesus, if you consider it a myth, Jesus is the sun, right? But he's also the astrological sun, and the 12 apostles are basically the zodiac signs. And if you think about like the Last Supper, the image of the Last Supper, and he's in the middle and the signs are around him, it kind of makes you start to see that story in a different light. And, you know, thinking about Mercury in retrograde, it makes me think a lot about tides. And I think, you know, if you have any interest in astrology, there are constant tides, you know, when the planets are shifting. And I think that once these things happen, there are effects that happen. People behave differently. I mean, even if you think about the moon and lunacy, or mythology about like werewolves, and even things like very simple things like even the wind, I just think that if you look at them more like a mythology and there's a certain power to it. I mean, I think a good way to put it is the magician Israel Regardie put out a book called The Middle Pillar. The link is in the description. And in it, there is a lot of discussion about the Kabbalah, but primarily about thought forms. And what these are, when you can sort of take on the persona of these different gods and bring that into your psyche. For example, if, let's say, you were having trouble with your memory, you would probably want to petition Mnemosyne, who is the goddess of like the mnemonic or memory aspects of life, and you would try to bring, or you could say call down or harness the power of Mnemosyne. So I think that, the powers are just so strong sometimes. If anyone has been in love, they obviously know that no matter what you do when you're in love, you're at the mercy of Aphrodite. And there's a madness to it, and you get kind of hit by it. It's like getting hit by a truck in some ways. And no matter what you do, you're sort of fated to do that. It's really hard to resist. And you could say it's a chemical reaction, but I'm not so certain, because, a lot of times when I've been in love, especially the stronger times, much of it was intellectual. There was a physical aspect to it for sure, but there was also similarities in personality, or it was almost as if something swept up this person and just delivered them to me, put them in my way, so to speak. And then, I had to either make a choice about whether I followed that or if I resisted it. And sometimes it's so strong, you could say that Aphrodite's power is so strong that no matter what you do, you just can't resist it, to the destruction of a lot of people, actually. People lose their marriages or lose their jobs over these things. And you could just say it's just their desire, it's inside them. But I don't know, there's something magical about two people getting sort of thrown together, and the attraction is so strong that they're willing to sacrifice just about anything for it to complete it. So, some other things that come to mind offhand are like the Muses. I've written several books and I've created a lot of art over the years, and sometimes things come to me that I have no explanation for. You could just say it's an idea that I've thought of, but sometimes they kind of overtake me, just like Aphrodite can. The Muses get inside me and take me down a path I wasn't intending to go down. They can really convince a person to forsake everything else to fulfill the creation of something. So there have been times where the Muses came to me, let's say right before I was going to go to sleep, and I ended up staying up all night writing something or creating a collage or a drawing or something. And if I had ignored those Muses, then that creation would have not been there. So I guess part of it is you interacting with it, but there is also an aspect of being at the mercy of it. One force that I think we are definitely at the mercy of are the Furies, and they sort of dispense judgment. And if you've ever gotten in a situation where, let's say with a friend or a colleague or something, that you never intended for it to be a destructive experience, but the choices that you made ended up leading to this destructive experience. And I don't think it's necessarily anybody's fault. I think that sometimes just the situation is colored by the forces that are surrounding it. So, I mean, you could have a situation where there's a misunderstanding and each person reacts differently to that same misunderstanding, and then obviously that will cause more chaos. And, you know, there's also other things, other stories in mythology that I think are very interesting, like the unicorns. We tend to think of them as sort of this beast that befriends a virgin, but if you really look deep into the symbolism, it's this sort of phallic rite, and it has all of the different details of like being human, I guess. The sort of magical and almost like expanding of consciousness, but also tied to the bestial and the mundane. And there are many other beasts like that in mythology, like the griffins and the chimeras and the hydras and the sirens. And, you know, anyone that has been at the mercy of a man or a woman can understand like the power of a siren, especially if they, you know, had some power over you where they ended up destroying part of your life or creating some kind of chaos. So, I mean, I just think it's interesting to think of things like this, and over the years I've read a lot of books about mythology, and it really helps you keep your world alive around you. I don't know, it's an experiment you can do. If you start reading some books, I have a few here that I can recommend. Here's probably one of the best ones, and that is this, Bullfinch's Mythology. It's an excellent book. The link is in the description. And this, I mean, if you really want to know anything about Western myth, this would be where to start, I would say. Another one that I've done a separate video on that you can look at in the link here is called The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. That also has quite a large section on the gods and the goddesses. Some other books that I think would be very indispensable to trying to see the world this way would be The Power of Myth and The Hero with 1,000 Faces by Joseph Campbell. Both of those books are excellent. And if you really want to go in deep in detail about all of these stories, I would check out The Golden Bough by Fraser. That takes a lot of what's in these other books and brings it to the next level. So one last thing I want to show you concerning this is this book I picked up at a used bookstore not too long ago. It's called Lost Goddesses of Early Greece. I really love this book. The cover is beautiful. And this is a great, I don't want to say experiment, but it's a really interesting take on the sort of pre-Hellenic mythology. So it's more female-based, I would say. And what I really like about it is it's very poetic. Each story is delivered in this sort of, if you can see, almost epic poem format, and there's just some really great illustrations. I love this. I mean, they're just beautiful. You can see that. Just really beautiful stuff. I highly recommend this. It's quite short and it's simple, but if you want to get the gist of some of these early stories, I think this is indispensable to have. Okay, I'm going to leave you today with a quick reading of the Myth of Gaia from this book. Primarily because I think it illustrates what I'm trying to say about just the simplicity of the mythology and how it explains and brings to life all of the little details of nature and also human nature. So here we go. The Myth of Gaia. Free of birth or destruction, of time or space, of form or condition is the void. From the eternal void, Gaia danced forth and rolled herself into a spinning ball. She molded mountains along her spine, valleys in the hollows of her flesh. A rhythm of hills and stretching plains followed her contours. From her warm moisture, she bore a flow of gentle rain that fed her surface and brought life. Wriggling creatures spawned in tidal pools, while tiny green shoots pushed upward through her pores. She filled oceans and ponds and set rivers flowing through deep furrows. Gaia watched her plants and animals grow. In time, she brought forth from her womb 6 women and 6 men. The mortals thrived, but they were continually concerned with the future. At first, Gaia felt this was an amusing eccentricity on their part. However, when she saw that their worry about the future nearly consumed some of her children, she installed among them an oracle. In the hills at the place they called Delphi, Gaia sent up steaming vapors from her netherworld. They wafted up from a cleft in the rocks surrounding a priestess. Gaia instructed her priestess in the ways of entering a trance and in the interpretation of messages that arose from the darkness of her earth womb. The mortals traveled long distances to consult the oracle. Will my child's birth be auspicious? Will our harvest be bountiful? Will the hunt yield enough game? Will my mother survive her illness? Gaia was so moved by their stream of anxieties that she sent forth other portents of the future at Athens and Aegae. Unceasingly, the Earth Mother manifested gifts on her surface and accepted the dead into her body. In return, she was revered by all mortals. Offerings to Gaia of honey and barley cake were left in a small hole in the earth before plants were gathered. Many of her temples were built near deep chasms, where yearly the mortals offered sweet cakes into her womb. From within the darkness of her secrets, Gaia received their gifts. That myth touches on so many great things, like the creation of the earth and the idea of divination and how it came to be, and also why people sacrifice to the land and in hopes of getting a better harvest. Just a lot of great things there. Anyway, that's all I got. I'll talk to you later. Bye.